bleeding out on her emergency room table, was the most feared Mafia boss in Boston. 3 cartel enforcers were seconds away from finishing the job. When they burst through the trauma bay doors demanding to see the patient, Damiano Ferrari grabbed the curvy nurse's wrist, pulled her against his chest, and coldly announced 4 words that would either save both their lives or get them both killed. "She is my wife." Isabella Moreno had spent her entire life being told her curves made her invisible. Tonight, the deadliest man in New England just made her his queen, and painted a target on her back that only blood could erase. Before we dive in, smash that like button, subscribe for more dark mafia romance every single week, and drop the city you are watching from in the comments below, so I know where my beautiful queens are tuning in from tonight. The fluorescent lights of St. Vincent's Hospital in Boston's North End hummed with the particular exhaustion of a Tuesday night bleeding into Wednesday morning. Isabella Moreno, everyone called her Bella, adjusted the drawstring on her navy blue scrubs and tried to ignore the way the fabric pulled slightly across her hips. She had bought them a size too loose on purpose. Her ex-boyfriend Mark, the smug orthopedic surgeon 2 floors up, had spent 2 years of her life telling her that a woman of her size should not draw attention to herself in a professional setting. 2 years of shrinking. 2 years of eating salads under his watchful gaze. 2 years of hearing him compare her to the pharmaceutical reps who visited his office. And when he finally left her 6 months ago for a size 2 blonde named Ashley who laughed too loudly at his jokes, Bella had promised herself she would stop shrinking. She had not quite managed it yet, but she was trying. She was 28 years old, 5'6", with olive skin inherited from her Puerto Rican mother and dark curls that refused to stay in the messy bun she perpetually wore. Her hazel eyes were tired tonight. Everything was tired tonight. Her mother's 3rd round of chemotherapy had drained the last of her savings. The eviction notice on her studio apartment was 3 days old, and she had just picked up her 4th double shift of the week because St. Vincent's paid time and a half for anyone stupid enough to work the graveyard rotation. Bella was that stupid. Bella was also the best trauma nurse on the floor, and everyone in the emergency department knew it, even if the hospital administrators would never say it out loud. Her supervisor Diane paused at the nurse's station as Bella logged in for her shift, running a critical eye over her scrubs. "Those looking a little snug around the middle tonight, sweetheart," Diane said with the kind of smile that was not a smile at all. "Maybe skip the vending machine on your break." Bella did not look up from the computer. "Thanks for the tip, Diane. I will keep in mind." Diane sniffed and walked away, her orthopedic shoes squeaking against the linoleum. Bella exhaled slowly through her nose. 2 years ago, she would have gone into the supply closet and cried. Tonight, she just clicked into the patient board and got to work. The first 2 hours of her shift were routine. A car accident with 2 minor injuries. An elderly gentleman with chest pains that turned out to be indigestion. A college student who had drunk far too much and needed fluids, and a lecture from the attending physician. Bella moved between patients with the easy grace of a woman who had found her calling. Even if the world kept telling her she did not look the part of a nurse in the glossy recruitment brochures. Her hands were steady. Her voice was calm. She could start in 4 on a screaming toddler in 12 seconds flat. She was very good at what she did. And then, at exactly 2:47 in the morning, the ambulance bay doors slammed open with a violence that made every nurse at the station look up. 2 men in black tactical gear, not paramedics, carried a makeshift gurney between them. On the gurney lay a man in a shredded charcoal Tom Ford suit, blood pouring from 3 bullet wounds in his abdomen. His skin the pale gray of a body that had already lost too much of what it needed to keep living. The 2 men set the gurney down in the middle of the trauma bay, exchanged a single look, and walked out again without a word. The doors swung shut behind them. Silence. Then the whispers started. "Oh my God," said the head resident, Dr. Patel, his voice barely above a breath. "That is Damiano Ferrari." Bella did not recognize the name. She stepped forward, gloves already snapping onto her hands. But Dr. Patel grabbed her arm. "Bella, no. Do you know who that is? That is the Ferrari. If he dies here, this hospital gets burned to the ground by morning. If he lives, the men who put those bullets in him come back to finish the job. And we are witnesses to everything. Every single one of us. She looked around. Every doctor in the trauma bay had suddenly remembered an urgent call, an urgent chart, an urgent anywhere. But here. Bella looked down at the dying man. His obsidian eyes flickered open for one brief second, locked onto hers with terrifying clarity, and closed again. She had a choice to make. She made it in half a second. She stepped forward, called for the crash cart, and got to work saving the life of a man she should have run from. For the next 6 hours, Bella did not stop moving. She could not get him into a real operating room because the surgeons had all developed sudden and convenient emergencies elsewhere in the hospital. So she did what she could in the trauma bay itself. She packed the wounds. She started 2 large-bore IVs and pushed fluids and O-negative blood until his pressure crept back into something that resembled human. She irrigated. She sutured. She called down to radiology and threatened a technician named Gary until he agreed to bring the portable imaging machine to her bay and pretend he had not seen anything. 2 of the 3 bullets had passed clean through. The third was lodged against his lower rib on the left side, and she used a pair of long forceps and every ounce of steadiness she had ever possessed to extract it while he lay unconscious on her table. She dropped the bullet into a metal basin with a small satisfying clink and kept working. Somewhere around dawn, she stepped back from him, peeled off her bloody gloves, and realized her hands were finally beginning to shake. His color had returned. His pulse was strong. He was going to live. She had done that. A quiet, exhausted pride bloomed in her chest, followed immediately by a cold spike of dread as she remembered exactly whose life she had just saved. Bella looked around the empty trauma bay. Everyone had left her. Every doctor, every fellow nurse, every orderly. She was completely alone with him. She wheeled the gurney herself into a private recovery room at the end of the wing, one that was not on the main patient board, one that she had marked in the system as an isolation ward for a fictional infectious patient. She closed the door behind her. She locked it, and then she finally allowed herself to look at him properly. He was beautiful in the terrible way that dangerous men sometimes are. High cheekbones, a jaw that looked as though it had been chiseled from marble, dark hair pushed back from his forehead. His forearms, exposed where she had cut away his ruined shirt, were covered in tattoos that climbed up his skin like ivy on a stone wall. Around his neck, still stained with his own blood, was an ancient silver rosary. Bella reached out without thinking and touched the small crucifix. His hand moved with a speed that should not have been possible for a man in his condition. His fingers closed around her wrist, gently but with unquestionable authority. His eyes were open. He was watching her. "What is your name, Bella Mia?" he rasped. His voice was gravel wrapped in velvet. His accent was faintly Italian, softened by a lifetime in Boston. "Isabella," she whispered. "Isabella Moreno." He held her wrist for another long moment, his obsidian eyes searching her face, as though he were memorizing it for a test he intended to pass. Then he closed his eyes again and lost consciousness. Bella pried his fingers from her wrist. She stood there for a full minute, breathing, before she noticed that her scrub top was soaked through with his blood, and that her hands were trembling not from exhaustion, but from something else entirely. She changed her scrubs. She washed her face. She sat down in the chair beside his bed to chart his vitals and to think. She was still thinking 2 hours later when the elevator at the end of the corridor dinged, and 3 men in expensive suits stepped off. Bella's back was to the hallway, but she saw them in the reflection of the darkened window. 3 men, sharp lapels, predatory posture. They were not doctors. They were not family. They were carrying a bouquet of white lilies and moving with the specific coordinated calm of men who had killed before and expected to kill again this morning. Bella's blood went cold. The lead man was tall, silver at the temples, olive-skinned, and beautiful in the way a knife blade is beautiful. He walked directly to the nurse's station at the far end of the hall and asked a question in a low, pleasant voice. The night charge nurse pointed toward the recovery wing. Bella did not wait to hear more. She stood up, smoothed her scrubs, and stepped out into the hallway, closing the door of Damiano's room behind her. She positioned herself squarely in front of it, her clipboard clutched to her chest, and she waited. The three men rounded the corner and slowed when they saw her. The lead man smiled. It was the smile of a wolf who had been offered a snack on the way to a larger meal. "Good morning, señorita," he said. His accent was Colombian, coastal, precise. "My associates and I are here to visit our dear friend, Mr. Ferrari. We understand he has been through quite an ordeal." He held up the lilies, as though this settled the matter. "Mr. Ferrari is not accepting visitors at this time," Bella said. Her voice was steady. She was proud of that. "Hospital policy for patients in this condition. You will need to leave your flowers at the front desk and come back during regular visiting hours." The lead man's smile did not waver, but his eyes did something ugly. He took one deliberate step closer. His jacket fell open, just enough to reveal the black grip of a pistol at his hip. He did not draw it. He simply let her see it. Then, in fluid, contemptuous Spanish, he turned his head slightly and spoke to the man on his right. "Look at this fat little cow guarding the wolf," he said. "Get her out of the way. If she squeaks, break her jaw." The man on his right chuckled. Bella's face burned. Every childhood summer with her mother's family in Ponce came flooding back. Every whispered abuela lullaby. Every heated argument at every Sunday dinner. She understood every single syllable. She did not let it show on her face. She did not blink. She simply planted her feet in front of the door and prepared to die there if she had to. The lead man, Rafael Cortez, took another step forward. Bella could smell the cigar smoke on his jacket and the cologne he had layered over it. His hand drifted casually toward the pistol at his hip. She squared her shoulders, tightened her grip on the clipboard, as though a piece of aluminum and paperwork could stop a bullet, and prepared to make him kill her in a public hospital hallway in front of security cameras. She had made her decision the moment she wheeled Damiano Ferrari into this room, and she would not unmake it now. Behind her, muffled through the heavy door, she heard the soft rustle of sheets. A quiet groan, the click of a safety being released. And then, from inside the room, a voice cut through the silence like a blade drawn across silk. "She stays. You leave." Raphael froze. His two men reached instinctively for their jackets. Bella did not move. She could not have moved if she had wanted to. The door behind her creaked open 6 inches, and Damiano Ferrari stood there. He should not have been standing. He had lost 3 units of blood 4 hours ago. He had a bullet extraction site sutured under his ribs. And yet there he was, propped against the door frame, with one hand braced against the wall for balance, wearing nothing but a pair of hospital pants slung low on his hips and the blood-stained rosary around his neck. His other hand held a suppressed Glock. Bella had no idea where it had come from. Later, much later, she would learn that his men had slipped it under his pillow before they left him on her table, on the assumption that if he woke up alone, he would want to be able to defend himself. His obsidian eyes were fixed on Rafael Cortez with the promise of biblical violence. "Damiano, mi amigo," Rafael said quickly, spreading his hands in a gesture of peace, the lilies still dangling from his fingers. "There is a misunderstanding. We came only to check on you, to wish you a swift recovery." Damiano did not lower the gun. His eyes flicked to Bella, and in that split second, Bella watched something calculate itself behind his face. She could see him weighing options, discarding them, arriving at a conclusion. He reached out with a hand that was not holding the gun, closed his calloused fingers gently around her wrist, and drew her backward into the room until she was standing directly in front of him. His arm slid around her waist and settled there with the weight of an anchor. She could feel the heat of his bare chest against her back, the slow, steady thud of his heart, the tremor of a man who was holding himself upright through willpower alone. "You will not touch her," Damiano said, and his voice was cold enough to frost the windows. "You will not look at her. You will not breathe the same air as her. Because this woman, the one your man just called a fat cow in a language you assume she did not speak, is my wife." Bella's heart stopped. Raphael's polished expression cracked for the first time. His eyes darted between Damiano's face and Bella's face and back again. "Your wife," he repeated, and there was a thin edge of laughter in his voice. "Ferrari, you do not have a wife. Everyone knows this. "We were married 3 weeks ago," Damiano said, calmly and quietly, and with the absolute conviction of a man reciting the alphabet. "Small ceremony. Family only. You would not have heard about it, because I do not tell my enemies about my joys. She is under my name, under my roof, and under the protection of every family I have ever done business with from Providence to Palermo." He tightened his arm around Bella's waist. "And if you or any of your men ever speak of her again in any language, I will personally deliver each of your tongues to your mothers in Cartagena. Do we understand each other?" The silence that followed was the loudest silence Bella had ever heard. Rafael Cortez was a man who had built a career on being unreadable, but even he could not entirely hide the calculation happening behind his eyes. To touch a made man's wife was to invite a war that no cartel in the Western Hemisphere wanted right now. He did not know if the story was true. He suspected it was not. But suspicion was not enough to gamble the lives of every man he had west of the Mississippi. He inclined his head with terrible courtesy. "My apologies, Mrs. Ferrari," he said in perfect English, meeting Bella's eyes for the first time, as though she were a person and not an obstacle. "Congratulations on your recent nuptials. My associates and I will leave you to your recovery." He set the lilies down on the linoleum at her feet like a tribute. He turned. He walked away. His 2 men followed him. The elevator dinged. They were gone. Damiano's arm slid off her waist. He staggered backward and sat down hard on the edge of the bed, the gun clattering onto the sheets beside him. Bella closed and locked the door. She turned around slowly. Her hands were shaking. "What did you just do?" she whispered. "What did you just do?" "I saved your life," he said. His breathing was ragged. "Those men were not here to visit me. They were here to finish me. And you had already seen too much. The moment they had put a bullet in me, they would have put one in you and every other person on this floor. The lie I just told is the only thing standing between you and a shallow grave in the fens, Isabella. I am sorry. I did not have time to be delicate." She sat down hard in the chair beside his bed because her legs had stopped believing in themselves. He explained the rest quietly, methodically, like a man who had negotiated for a living. She had 2 choices. She could walk out of the hospital right now. He would give her $50,000 in cash from a safe in the North End. She could take her mother, disappear, spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, because Rafael Cortez did not forget faces. Or she could play the wife, publicly, for 3 months, until he neutralized the Vega cartel permanently. She would move into his fortified penthouse in Back Bay. She would wear his ring. She would attend the functions. In exchange, she would clear her mother's medical debt in full, $340,000, pay off her student loans, and hand her $2 million and a new identity when it was over. "I am not asking you to share my bed," he added, and something dark and quiet flickered behind his eyes when he said it. "I am asking you to share my name. That is all." Bella thought of her mother, of the eviction notice, of Mark, of Ashley, of 30 years of shrinking. She stood up. She smoothed her scrubs. She looked him dead in the eye. 3 months, she said. Separate rooms. And the first hospital payment goes out by tomorrow morning. Damiano's mouth curved into a slow, devastating smile. "Consider it done, Mrs. Ferrari." 2 days later, Bella stood in the middle of a walk-in closet the size of her old studio apartment and tried to remember how to breathe. The Back Bay penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a limestone building on Commonwealth Avenue. For 1,000 square feet of Italian marble and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Charles River. A silent housekeeper named Rosa had met her at the private elevator and shown her to what Rosa called the ladies' suite, a bedroom larger than any home Bella had ever lived in, decorated in soft cream and gold, with a view of the water that made her chest ache. Damiano occupied the master suite at the other end of the penthouse. Separate rooms, exactly as promised. The closet, however, was what stopped her in her tracks. Every single garment inside it had been custom-made. Every single one of them was her exact size. Deep emerald silk, ruby cashmere, midnight blue crepe, ivory wool. Not a single tent-shaped tunic. Not a single piece of black shapewear. Not a single garment designed to hide her. Every dress, every blouse, every coat had been engineered by a plus-size Italian designer named Valentina Rizzo, whom Damiano had apparently flown in from Milan on 12 hours' notice. If you're loving Bella's story so far, hit that like button, subscribe for more dark mafia romance every single week, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from tonight. I love seeing where my queens are tuning in from. On the marble vanity sat a Cartier box. Bella opened it with trembling fingers. Inside lay a 6-carat emerald-cut diamond ring set in platinum, flanked by a matching wedding band, both nestled on black velvet. Tucked into the lid was a folded card in sharp black handwriting. A queen does not apologize for the space she takes up. Wear these when you face them today. Bella slipped the rings onto her finger. They fit as though they had been sized to her hand while she slept, which, she realized with a chill, they probably had been. Damiano Ferrari did nothing by accident. Rosa knocked softly at the door. Mrs. Ferrari, Mr. Ferrari asks whether you would join him for breakfast on the terrace. He would like to discuss today's schedule. Bella stared at herself in the mirror. A woman in a silk robe worth more than her monthly rent, wearing rings worth more than her mother's house, being called Mrs. Ferrari by a stranger in a Boston penthouse. Yes, Rosa, she said. Tell him I will be right there. Damiano was already dressed when she found him on the terrace, in a 3-piece charcoal suit that had been tailored so precisely to his frame that the bandages beneath it were invisible. He should not have been on his feet at all. He was on his feet anyway. He rose when she stepped through the French doors, and his obsidian eyes swept over her once with an intensity that made her feel suddenly, uncomfortably beautiful. Good morning, Mia Mowgli, he said. You look well. She sat across from him and reached for the coffee. What is the plan for today? He set down his espresso cup and folded his hands on the table. Today, he said, we go back to St. Vincent's. Bella nearly dropped her cup. Why? Because a rumor is only as strong as the number of people who witness it, and the story of our marriage needs to be seen by the exact people who saw you in bloodstained scrubs 72 hours ago. I will walk into your emergency department in front of every doctor and nurse who has ever underestimated you, and I will collect my wife. He said the last 2 words as though they were a vow. Bella swallowed. Fine, she said. Let's go collect me. She wore a fitted emerald green wrap dress, cut to celebrate every curve of her body, paired with camel-colored heels she should not have been able to walk in, but somehow could. Her dark curls were swept into a low twist by a stylist Damiano had summoned to the penthouse at 8 in the morning. Her lips were painted a defiant crimson. The Cartier rings caught the light of the private elevator as it descended. When they stepped out into the lobby, for bodyguards fell into formation around them without a word. The black armored SUV was already waiting at the curb. St. Vincent's Hospital, Damiano told the driver. The main entrance, not the ambulance bay. The walk from the SUV to the automatic doors of the emergency department was the longest 20 seconds of Bella's life. She could feel her mother's rosary against her collarbone under the silk. She could feel Damiano's hand at the small of her back, steady, warm, possessive. The doors slid open. The chaos of a Wednesday afternoon in the ER hit them like a wave, and then, one by one, that chaos went quiet. A charge nurse dropped her clipboard. Dr. Patel, who had run from Bella's trauma bay 3 nights ago, went the color of skimmed milk. Diane, her supervisor, stopped mid-sentence and stared at Bella as though she had never seen her before. And from across the waiting room, in his crisp white coat, came Mark, Ashley on his arm in a fitted lavender dress, laughing at something he had said. Mark saw her. Mark saw the dress. Mark saw the man beside her. And Mark, who had spent 2 years of his life telling Bella she should shrink, walked directly over as though he still had the right. Bella, he said with a puzzled smile. Sweetheart, what is going on? Who is your friend? Damiano turned his head slowly. He did not remove his hand from Bella's back. And you are, he said, his voice mild and pleasant and cold enough to lower the temperature of the room. Dr. Mark Whitfield, Mark said, extending a hand that Damiano did not shake. I am Bella's ex. We were together for 2 years. I just want to make sure she is not making one of her impulsive decisions." His eyes flicked down Bella's body when he said the word impulsive. Ashley smirked into her coffee cup. Damiano did not move for a long moment. Then he took one deliberate step forward, closing the distance between himself and Mark until they were almost chest to chest. He was 2 inches taller. He used every one of them. "Dr. Whitfield," he said quietly, "that is a very interesting introduction. Because I recall my wife mentioning a man who told her to lose 30 pounds to be presentable at his hospital functions. A man who left her 6 months ago for a woman with the personality of hospital linen." He glanced at Ashley, who went the color of her lavender dress. "I have been looking forward to meeting you." He reached out and adjusted Mark's stethoscope for him with terrifying gentleness. "Let me explain something, doctor. My wife is the finest trauma nurse in the city of Boston. She saved my life 3 nights ago while men with your resume ran for the exits. Every curve on her body is a landmark I intend to spend the rest of my life mapping. And the next time you look at her, the next time you even think her name, I want you to remember 3 things. I own the pharmaceutical distributor that supplies 60% of this hospital's oncology unit. I own the medical malpractice insurance company that carries your policy. And I own 3 federal judges who owe me favors." He patted Mark's cheek. "Sleep well, doctor." He turned to Bella and offered his arm. "Shall we go home, Mrs. Ferrari?" Bella took his arm without looking at Mark, without looking at Ashley, without looking at anyone. She walked out of St. Vincent's Hospital with her head held higher than it had ever been in her life. And by the time the SUV pulled away from the curb, Ashley was already whispering to Mark that maybe they should reconsider the wedding date. The next week passed in a rhythm Bella had not expected. She kept her hospital shifts because Damiano had insisted. "A queen with a purpose is more dangerous than one without," he had said over breakfast the morning after the confrontation. She wore the rings to work. She wore the clothes Valentina Rizzo had made for her under her scrubs. And she noticed slowly that the way people looked at her had changed. Diane no longer commented on her uniform. Dr. Patel deferred to her judgment on trauma calls. And Mark, Bella learned from a whispered conversation at the nurse's station, had lost his hospital privileges by Thursday after 3 former patients had suddenly found the confidence to file malpractice suits. Ashley returned the ring on Friday. By Sunday, Mark was applying to rural clinics in Idaho. Damiano never mentioned any of it. He did not have to. In the evenings, Bella came home to the penthouse and Damiano was waiting for her. He asked about her day. He listened. He watched her over the rim of his whiskey glass with an intensity she had begun to feel in her bones. Separate rooms, as promised. But something was building between them that neither of them had put in the contract. It broke open on the 8th night. Bella was leaving St. Vincent's at 11 when a black SUV screeched up to the curb. 2 men grabbed her from behind. A hand clamped over her mouth, a needle sank into her neck, and the world went black. She woke up in a warehouse in Southie, wrists bound with zip ties, Rafael Cortez standing over her with a cigar between his teeth. "Mrs. Ferrari," he purred. "Or should I say, Nurse Moreno? Because we did some checking. No marriage certificate in Massachusetts. No prenuptial agreement. No joint accounts. 3 weeks ago, you were serving lunch to your mother in a chemotherapy ward. You are not his wife. You are a very convenient lie. And that means the entire East Coast is about to learn that Damiano Ferrari can be manipulated by a fat little nurse with a heart condition for a mother." He crouched down until his eyes were level with hers. "I am going to send him a video," he said. "And when he comes for you, and he will come, we will be ready." Bella did not cry. She looked Rafael Cortez in the eye and in perfect Pon Spanish, told him exactly what her grandmother would have said to a man like him. Rafael's smile flickered for the first time. He slapped her across the face and walked out to set up the camera. At the penthouse, Damiano received the video on his phone at 11:47. He watched it once. He did not shout. He did not throw the phone. He simply set it down on the marble counter, walked to the private safe in his study, and pulled out a matte black case that had not been opened in 8 years. "Marco," he said quietly into his phone, "assemble the family. All of them. And call Father Bruno. The priest, boss, Marco said carefully. Yes, Damiano said. Because the moment I bring her home, I'm going to marry that woman for real. And then I am going to burn the Vega cartel off the face of the earth. The raid on the Southey warehouse happened at 3:17 in the morning. Bella heard the gunfire before she understood what it was. Then the door burst open, and Damiano stood there in black tactical gear layered over that same charcoal suit, blood on his knuckles, eyes wild with something she had never seen in a man's eyes before. He crossed the room in 3 strides. He cut her ties. He cupped her face in both of his hands as though she were made of spun glass. Bella, look at me. Did he touch you? Tell me. I am okay, she whispered. Damiano, I am okay. He rested his forehead against hers, and she felt him shaking. I am done pretending, he breathed. The contract is void, Isabella. Whatever this is between us, this is not a lie anymore. Tell me you feel it too, and I will spend the rest of my life earning you. Refuse me, and I will still make sure you and your mother are safe forever, and I will disappear from your life tonight. But look me in the eye and tell me the truth. Bella looked at him, this dangerous, terrifying, tender man who had never once made her feel like she needed to be smaller, who had looked at her body like it was a cathedral and her mind like it was a weapon. I feel it too, she whispered. God help me, Damiano, I feel it too. He kissed her in the middle of a warehouse full of Rafael Cortez's fallen men, with Rafael himself zip-tied and bleeding in the corner watching. And it was the first kiss of her life that had not been a compromise. 48 hours later, the world had rearranged itself. Every Vega cartel asset in the Northeast was seized, frozen, or federally raided. It turned out Damiano had spent 3 years quietly building a dossier of evidence and handing pieces of it to the DEA in exchange for immunity on specific charges, waiting for the right moment to pull the trigger. Rafael Cortez's kidnapping of the woman Boston believed to be Damiano Ferrari's wife had been that moment. News chirons scrolled across every television in the city. 23 arrests. $9 billion in seized assets. Rafael Cortez himself extradited to face federal charges, though not before an unfortunate incident in holding left him permanently unable to speak. Bella's mother was transferred to the top oncology specialist in Boston, all bills paid in full. Damiano visited her personally, brought her white roses, kissed her hand, and called her mama. Her mother, weak but sharp-eyed, pulled him close and whispered something in Spanish that made him laugh once, and then nod solemnly. Later Bella asked what her mother had said. She said, if I ever make you cry, she will find the strength to leave that bed and beat me with her rosary, Damiano said. I told her I believed her. 2 weeks later, they were married for real. A small ceremony at a private chapel in the North End. No cameras, no press, only the people who mattered. Bella wore an ivory silk gown designed by Valentina Rizzo, off the shoulder, cinched at the waist, with a long, elegant train that celebrated every curve of the body her ex had once called a problem. Her mother sat in the front row in a wheelchair, radiant. Damiano waited at the altar in a midnight black 3-piece suit, and when he saw Bella walking down the aisle, this feared and ruthless man had tears standing in his eyes. At the reception, held in the ballroom of Boston's most exclusive hotel, every major family, from Providence to New York, sent a representative, not out of politics, but out of respect. The story had traveled. The Ferrari boss had found a queen who had saved his life, stood between him and a cartel bullet, and refused to break. Damiano stood to give his toast, and the ballroom fell silent. For 37 years, he said, I believed I was born to inherit an empire of blood. I believed love was a liability and softness was a weakness. Then a woman in bloodstained scrubs stood between me and death and did not flinch. She was called ugly in 3 languages by men who could not see her. She was told to shrink by men who could not hold her. Any enemy who ever again disrespects my wife, her body, her mind, her name, will discover very quickly that the Ferrari family has a new queen. And she is far more dangerous than her husband. He raised his glass to Isabella Ferrari, the woman who taught the devil how to kneel. Later, on the balcony overlooking Boston Harbor, Damiano wrapped his arms around her from behind. She was wearing the emerald ring, the wedding band, and a new diamond rosary he had given her that morning, an echo of the one that had lain against his chest the night they met. "Any regrets, Mrs. Ferrari?" he murmured against her hair. She thought of the trauma, Bay, the zip ties, the gunfire, the transformation. "Only one," she said softly. He tensed. She turned in his arms and smiled up at him. "That I did not call you my husband the first time you asked." He kissed her under the Boston skyline, and somewhere in the city, an enemy heard about the wedding and quietly decided to relocate his family to Sicily. The reign of Queen Isabella had officially begun. If Bella's story gave you chills tonight, smash that like button, subscribe and ring the bell for a new dark mafia romance every single week. And drop your city in the comments below so I can see where my beautiful queens are watching from tonight. Sweet dreams, my loves.